Hi everyone, my name is Lisa Murray. Thank you for joining me today for the session called Say What You Mean and Mean What You Say. I spent a lot of time in the classroom as a special educator dealing with misbehaviors for about 7 years. And what I found to be true was if I could discover the why behind the behavior, the reason or the goal for the misbehavior, I could find a way to more appropriately respond to it. And when I did that, it increased the likelihood that I could decrease or eliminate the behavior entirely. In this session today, I'm going to teach you how to do that. It's going to be a really important step in getting control of behaviors in your classroom. Let's get started. Have behaviors gotten worse in the classroom? It most definitely feels like behaviors have gotten worse. If you have worked with children for a long time like I have, you know that some of the milder misbehaviors we saw before have turned into much more significant behavioral issues. Here are just a few reasons behaviors may be getting worse. First, parents are overscheduled. They are feeling stressed by the amount of activities that they have put their children in. And children are feeling stressed too, and we're seeing it in their behaviors. Sometimes parents may be providing a poor model. And society certainly has a need for immediate gratification in all areas. So this has increased impatience in both parents and children. There may be less follow through with consequences, and there are definitely issues with boundary and limit setting. We also may see parents exhibiting parenting styles that are not very effective. Dr. Rudolf Dreikurs, an Austrian psychiatrist and educator, determined that there are 4 goals to misbehavior. Dreikurs believed it was possible to understand children's misbehaviors by recognizing the 4 main purposes or goals of the child. The 4 goals of misbehavior are attention, power, avoidance of failure, and revenge. Dreikurs believes that when we understand these 4 goals, we can approach the situations in a much more effective manner, whether we're in the classroom or in any childcare setting. Kids are just going to be kids, right? Well, that is true. There are behaviors, however, that are destructive, not acceptable, and certainly not developmentally appropriate in any classroom or childcare setting. Understanding child development and knowing what behaviors you should see developing at each stage is critically important when working with children. For example, a preschool teacher that believes it's appropriate to expect a 3-year-old to sit at a table for a half an hour to do a project isn't being realistic for that developmental stage. Social and emotional behaviors will be what we are focusing on today. As a teacher or child care provider, being able to consistently say what you mean and mean what you say as it relates to behavior and consequences is so important, especially if you want to send a message to a child in your care that what you say matters. They need to be able to rely on your consistency. We certainly can't expect children to behave consistently if we don't. The 4 goals of misbehavior are just that, goals. There is a reason behind the behavior. Once we can determine the goal, we can make adjustments to how we respond to be more effective and to send the right message. A child who wants attention will try to get it by acting out in many different ways. And unfortunately, negative attention is better than no attention. Children also need to have a sense of power or control over their environment and sometimes the people in the environment. That would include you, your classroom, and the children in the classroom. Children who want to avoid failure do so in a way that may look different than the other behaviors. This is a child who lacks self-esteem and needs a lot of encouragement. When children are in the revenge mode for behaviors, these behaviors are much more significant. This child may have tried other types of behaviors and they didn't get what they want, so they move to revenge. This type of behavior is very challenging to deal with, and I will describe how to respond to this behavior along with the others in a few moments. Attention-getting behavior tends to be annoying and irritating. When a child is inappropriately making noises while you're reading a story or doing a lesson, calls out answers instead of raising their hand, or seems to ignore you when you are making a request, is definitely showing you attention-getting behaviors. Here's a list of some of the other attention-getting behaviors, and I'm sure you would have behaviors you could add to this list. Examples of power and control behaviors, they look a little different. When a child refuses to cooperate, and especially when they can't make a choice when you offer limited choices, they are clearly telling you that their goal is power. If the child always needs to have the last word, likes to be in charge, and may have a temper tantrum when they hear the word no, are also in the power and control mode. One thing that's important to keep in mind is to pay attention to how the behavior makes you feel as a teacher. If, for example, you feel irritated and annoyed, the behavior's goal may be attention. If you feel frustrated, angry, or even threatened by the behavior, the goal may be power. The reason identifying the goal is important is so that we can determine the best approach for responding to it, which will increase the chance that we will be effective in stopping or decreasing its frequency. Both are good outcomes. Avoidance of failure behaviors tend to be a little more difficult to recognize. Children with this goal are trying to send messages to us about how they feel about themselves. They don't feel capable in some way, and because of that feeling, they avoid activities or even people that make them feel inadequate. You may hear a child regularly tell you they just don't feel physically well before an activity. If this is consistent and it only happens before that activity, this is an indicator something's wrong. A child is telling you, without actually telling you, that they don't feel capable. Pay attention to the times of day or the specific types of activities that a child regularly complains about or refuses to participate in. The way you may feel, this indicator of the goal, may be professional concern or frustration. Revengeful behaviors. These behaviors can be very challenging in any classroom. Depending on what the child has tried previously to get your attention or to regain power, these behaviors could be very destructive. The behaviors also can dramatically impact relationships between classmates and the teacher. Recognizing these aggressive behaviors and the goal behind them is the first step in helping children improve their behavior. As a teacher, you may feel hurt, discouraged, and want to give up, especially if the behavior is very destructive. These children are hurting. We can break through to them. Now that we understand the different types of behaviors, let's look at how to respond to them in a way that is effective and doesn't pay off the behavior, creating a pattern of misbehavior. Giving children attention when attention is the goal is paying off the behavior. It will repeat itself and you will develop it into a pattern. You will see behaviors in the classroom repeat over and over again, and you'll say to yourself, why does this keep happening? For example, if each time a child is disruptive by speaking over another child, calling out an answer, you stop what you're doing to remind them of the rule of raising their hand. Then they have learned that that behavior is an effective way to get your attention. And it will happen over and over again, and your frustration will increase. With that said, you can choose to ignore calling out, and you can let the child know that you're going to do just that. You might say, I'm going to read a story today and I may ask some questions. Please raise your hand if you want to answer. If you call out, I'm going to ignore you. And ignore them if it happens. Saying what you mean and meaning what you say creates a consistency for children, and they learn to know what you expect and how you will react. If this approach, if consistent, can lead to the behavior being eliminated. Always be prepared for children to test you, especially the first time you do it. This approach sets you up and your child for success. Consistency is the key. Power and control types of behaviors can be frustrating in any classroom. A child's need for some type of control over their lives is an important one. Giving limited choices when appropriate can make them feel like they do have control. For example, you may say to a child, "We're going to use markers today. We have 2 colors, red and yellow. Which one would you like?" Repeating the choices 3 times is an effective way that you can help children build problem-solving skills. When a child doesn't choose, the last choice is that you choose for them. Again, being consistent with this approach is one of the best ways to communicate to children that you meant what you said. And it increases the likelihood that they will make a choice next time limited choices are given. When children don't feel capable, they avoid feeling inadequate. They need help in understanding their strengths, and they need us to validate how they feel. Being dismissive of children's feelings is one of the best ways to get children to either shut down or become angry, because emotions that get bottled up or not validated most certainly come out in ugly ways. Helping children build on small strengths become the building blocks to getting them to feel more capable, which will allow them to not feel like they need to avoid activities or situations that cause them to feel pressured. We can also give children limited choices to encourage them to get involved in some way, maybe not just fully quite yet. Using descriptive praise is important in building a child's self-worth. Descriptive praise sounds differently than most other praises we use. Descriptive praise is specific. It sounds like this: "Zach, I noticed that you helped Isabel put all of her crayons away when she dropped them. Thank you." Instead of, "Good job, Zach." Helping children to identify their strengths, and even more importantly, making them feel like it was noteworthy, will help them feel positive about decisions they make and want them to repeat that same behavior. Building on children's strengths overall is a good method in helping develop a child's self-worth, which in turn will help decrease these avoidance of failure types of behaviors. One of the most challenging goals of misbehavior is revenge. Children in this mode may have tried other types of behaviors, like attention and power, to get their needs met, and they didn't find success in them. Therefore, they move into this mode. There may also be some significant issues involving relationships. Sometimes these issues may be coming from the home, which you will most likely have no control over. When these behaviors spill into the classroom, you will find yourself becoming more and more concerned that there may be no end in sight. The most important way to address these types of behaviors is by building on the teacher-child relationship. Children who feel safe, cared about, and who are in a structured environment with boundaries will do better. These children need to know you care and you believe in them. So many times we focus on the negatives and forget that these children do have positives. Giving children that positive feedback, including using descriptive praise, will let the child know you haven't given up on them. Always hold children accountable with logical consequences, and be careful not to escalate the situation by getting involved in power struggles. Although these behaviors are very difficult, I have seen countless examples of real improvement in behavior and in the teacher-child relationships. Don't ever give up on these children or the relationship. Let's look at some things to remember before you determine how to respond. If the behavior is disruptive, then certainly it needs to be addressed. Some behaviors, however, just may need a gentle reminder of the expectation or need to be ignored entirely. Being able to try to identify the goal behind each behavior will help guide your response. We always want to respond to each behavior with the appropriate level of intervention. A child who doesn't clean up when asked to will miss part of the next activity while cleaning up. That's just logical. If a child drops their paint on the floor, they need to get some paper towels and be assisted in cleaning it up. That's also logical. Be sure you start with the least restrictive response, like the example I just gave, and then move to a more significant consequence, like removing the child from the table if they get aggressive or escalate. Each situation will call for you to make good decisions on this. We don't want to overreact. The broken record technique is a very effective strategy. You will want to use it when appropriate, especially when giving limited choices as an option. Doing this consistently will set children up for successful problem solving, and it will build their confidence in doing so. When you need to remove a child, it is sending a strong message that that behavior is not only not acceptable, but it won't be tolerated. That is a very important message and one you need to send consistently. The reasons behaviors keep repeating is that we don't respond to them in a way that is effective or sends the right message. I hope you enjoyed this session on behaviors. I have a few takeaway tips for you. Always remember that trying to understand the goal behind the misbehavior can help you respond more appropriately. And the way you do that is think about the way you feel. It's going to be a good indicator of the misbehaving goal. Next, make sure we give kids consequences that are appropriate and logical and set boundaries for them because it's going to teach them great problem-solving skills. Always teach kids that their behavior is a choice. Positive behavior results in great results. Negative misbehaviors should result in consequences. And lastly, a child's ability to tolerate negativity is going to be far greater than any teacher or parent. So hang in there. I promise you, the behavior will get better. Best of luck to you.